Cuban Cigars. Perfected for more than 150 years. Yours to enjoy now.
Stogie Geeks, welcome to the second segment of Stogie Geeks. This is episode 357. For any show notes, you go to stogiegeeks.com/357. In this segment, Nelson, Drew, and myself interview Bill DeLisi. Bill is going to provide us with insight on the current state of Cuban cigars. He'll also discuss the past 15 or so years of the Cuban cigar industry. We have some business projections and what we can expect from that industry over the next 3 to 5 years or so. Bill, welcome to Stogie Geeks.
Thank you, Joe. Good to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Drew, say hi to Bill.
Bill, how's it going out there? Where you at, Bill?
I'm in Southern California. It doesn't look like it because I'm freezing my ass off, but yes, I'm in Southern California.
Where about? I'm from Southern California.
Rancho Cucamonga.
Oh, okay. No, yep. I'm up in the East Los Angeles area, Long Beach, Downey, Paramount, Lakewood area.
So you know the weather that we have is unusual today.
Yes, I do know that. My sister lives out that way in Corona.
Yeah.
Every single intro with Drew has to do with weather. Did you ever notice that?
It's true. There's a pattern.
It's like a pattern, Bill. That's so funny. Nelson, say
well, that's
hi to
how
Bill.
I migrate.
Yeah, right. That's why you migrate.
Hey, Bill, how's it going? I'm not going to bring up weather. I thought you were like hiking through the Adirondacks and stopped to do this interview. I don't know what's going on.
So
that's later today, yes.
So quick inside baseball for you Stogie Geeks listeners who do not watch any of the Security Weekly episodes. Bill was on Paul's Security Weekly a couple weeks ago and discussed cyber. Help me out, Bill.
Cybersecurity,
yeah. Well, cybersecurity, but mostly like
quantum computing,
safe browsing for your children, and having a safe browser and all of that stuff. Stogie Geeks, if you are so inclined and have little ones that go on the internet, email me at joeh@stogiegeeks.com. I'll send you the link to that. And then Paul, in his Paul's Security Weekly fashion, says, "Yeah, we do a podcast in cigars. Right?" And and then Bill reached out, and here he is. And when we were talking about topic, he brought up a topic, and I'm like, "Okay, what do you?" And he started rattling off what he knows about this thing. I'm like, "Okay, I gotta get you on the show because we all know that there's an embargo with the U.S. and Cuba. It's been going on since well into the 50s, well before our time, right? But that conversation comes up all the time, whether you're Drew, Nelson, or myself, and you visit lounges. Like, hey, do you enjoy Cubans? Do you have Cubans? Do you like Cubans? And so Bill is going to take us through that. And tell us about his experience and what he's going to talk about, because I think it's a fascinating discussion that most podcasts here in North America kind of ignore, right?
Right.
So, Bill, take it away.
Thank you, Joe. First of all, you got the cigars I sent you? I was wondering if you were smoking one today.
Of course I am. Absolutely. I'm smoking the Ramon Alones.
Same here.
Yep.
Same one.
And I do have this one, the H. Upman, but I'm going to save that for a little later.
Not a special occasion there, right?
Well, no, never a special.
Not with this guy.
That will be smoking by the time the sun sets here in New England. So just so
Excellent.
You know. And then with the samples that you had sent, I did split it with Paul as well. And he's like, ooh. And Paul is a saver, though. I'm not going to lie. Yours probably will have to go in rotation. He does categorize them as to who he gets them from in there. And I'm expecting sometime 3 years from now, I'm making the number up, right? I'm just trying to be funny. 3 years from now, I'll be like, remember that cigar Bill gave us? It was great, And so,
right.
But yes, absolutely. I'm smoking the Ramon Alones.
Excellent. I want to hear how you like it in a bit, okay?
Absolutely.
First of all, Cuban cigars have been sold around the world for many, many years. Before the 1961, or actually 60, they were sold here in the United States, and then the embargo happened. And then, well, right before the embargo happened, President Kennedy sent his aide out to get around 2,200 cigars, Cuban cigars, that is, his favorites. And then the embargo happened. I don't blame him, because that's probably what I would have done as well. But since then, Cuban has struggled a bit, but since they have the best cigars on the planet, they still sell a lot of cigars. I'm going to talk mostly about the last 20 years, and then mostly about the last 5 years, and then the next 5 years. Since 2000, let's say 1999, when 1999 happened, that's when Cuban cigars around the world went crazy. Everybody wanted them. There was such a demand that they had to increase the amount of rollers that they had. They had to use all of the tobacco, which normally they would just use the best parts. And the industry, this Cuban cigar industry, went straight downhill. 1999, 2000, 2001. If anyone has boxes from back in, there's a lot of what we call tent posts in those boxes where you couldn't, it's like sucking a bowling ball through a garden hose. It's just impossible. And then after that, they slowly started learning what they needed to know, got better at rolling. 2004 was one of the most exceptional years. They had the LEs, which is the limited edition cigars. They also had the advent of the regional cigars, which actually started in 2005. And even to this day, if you can get a box from 2004, it's probably going to be pretty good. And then you have 2008, which is the next best year. 2008, certain box codes like POS are really, really good. And the cigars, most of them, I would say 80% of them were exceptional. One thing you need to know is if you have a bad box of cigars, whether they be Cuban or anything else, they're not going to age well. They're not going to, 10 years later, they're not going to be amazing cigars. You have to start out with decent cigars, and then they can be really good. If you have great cigars, then they're going to be world class. A lot of the 2008 stock were great cigars. So today, they're world class. But I believe in the last 20 years, the best year for Cuban cigars so far, 2020 is looking good, but is 2014. Certain box codes like ULA, MLU, MLO, MLU, these box codes, if you can get them, are like gold. These 2014 boxes are exceptional, which means today, which is 7 years later, they're crazy good. Some of the best cigars on the planet. And then after that, we had some problems with weather, problems with the economy in Cuba. The biggest problems have been the last 3 years. The last 3 years, we've had the embargo, which really hurt Cuba. Venezuela was banned from giving supplies to Cuba. You had a lack of fertilizer, a lack of pretty much everything dealing with cigars, machinery, gasoline, everything. And they pretty much had to go old school. What you're seeing in 2020 is a result of that. Late 2019, early 2020, and into really late 2020 are some of the best cigars I've seen in 20 years. Now, don't tell anybody, because everyone's going to go out and buy them, and there's not going to be enough left for me. So.
How did my first question out of the gate is,
yes,
if you have an opportunity to get your hands on some Cubans, how do you know what year they're from? Like, how do you know that as a consumer? Is it luck? Is it more than luck? Is there a little bit, is it because, it's not like here in the States, they have the tax sticker. When you can't open a box of cigars, you either use a X-Acto knife or whatever. It's actually a tax stamp, right? The tax stamp where the companies would buy X amount of those and they're already paid for taxes for the company, and so then they ship them down to the plant and they put them on the boxes, and so when they come into the state, they obviously have to have that little tax stamp on there, right? And
Habanos has a requirement for that, don't they?
They do have a requirement for the tax stamp, but the way you can tell the year is you turn the box over and the year is stamped on the bottom of the box.
Okay.
And so if you see like MLO, ENE 20, that's the box code from January of 2020. And so it's easy to tell. Now, the problem here in the United States is that over 90% of the Cuban cigars are fakes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And it's a commodity that everybody wants, so it's easily faked. A lot of times they use real bands and real boxes, and you don't realize they're fakes until you have an experiment and you cut one open and you see like hair and mice species and stuff like that. And you're like, oh my god, I only smoked a half a box of these, right? So that's very common here in the United States.
I have another question, but I don't want to hog. Like I could literally do this segment there. Nelson, you want to
go? Sure. So, I mean, I like to acquire them through whatever means I acquire them through, and one of the things, talking about the date and the stamp, the Habanos SA, I guess it's an organization, right? They supposedly are where you can confirm the validity of that box. Is that really true, or is that bunk?
They have a website. If you just Google Habanos and authenticity,
I've used
their site. Yeah, and then from, I believe it was 2007 or 8, maybe 9, they started putting the serial numbers on the tax stamp. And so you can cross-reference that serial number with that website, and then you can get authenticity of the cigar.
Okay.
Now the problem is the counterfeiters are going to they're going to use that box, and they're going to resell it with counterfeit cigars. And so if you look, there's like on eBay, people are selling boxes, just the boxes as collector's items, and people are stocking them up. You just want to be careful and buy from somebody or a place that you're well aware that they sell authentic Cuban cigars.
Mm-hmm. Before we get to a question from Drew, I want to kind of stay suit for those listeners out there, as opposed to the ones that are going to watch the show. Counterfeit cigars, right? Okay, they get the box. They can reduplicate the box. They can potentially reduplicate a serial number, right? They can potentially reduplicate the bands. Where's the tobacco come from?
That's a good question.
Is it in the warehouse in Miami? Because I look at the printing logistics, right? I've gotten involved with projects and seen, like, for example, Brian over at Churchill's, when he had his own blend, like, he has bought 10,000 bands of the cigar and then shipped it down to the plant. It wasn't a Cuban, obviously. It was a plant down in Nicaragua, and they put the bands on. They do that there. Bing, bang, boom. And then my next question, which you can kind of answer both, right, would be, what do you do for the bundles, the Cuban bundles? Because I've purchased some that are lower end Cubans, right? They're not like your Boulevards or Monte Cristo or Upman or Ramon Alonez. But you get the bundles and you try them out, right? And they seem to be pretty good. But how the heck do you know if those are counterfeit as well? And so my first question is, where the hell do they come from? Like, do you know, Bill?
No, I have some ideas.
Okay.
If you get them from Cuba, a lot of times they are the scraps that are swept up from the floor.
Okay.
So that's very common. They'll pull up those scraps, which is a lot, and then they can roll cigars. If you get them in the United States or Spain, any place like that, or Mexico, they're probably either Mexican or Nicaraguan or Honduran.
Mhm.
So you're going to get real cigars a lot of times that are fake, that are not Cuban. But it's best to have your sources vetted, and because of the large amount of fake cigars that are flowing around here. Everybody that has been in this industry, I've been smoking Cuban cigars for over 20 years. I've had fakes. Everyone who has been in this industry smoking Cuban cigars has had fakes. And it's just something that every one of us has gone through. We just get better at looking at a cigar. I can actually look at the cigar now and tell whether it's fake or not.
I want to stay on that subject, but I really don't want to butt out Drew, because I have my process that I go through, and I don't know if you have one, Nelson.
I do.
And Bill will have one, I'm sure. He's going to tell us, and I'm sure Drew has one there too. But Drew, jump on a question if you have one. I'm sure you do.
No. Well, yeah, I do. But to jump on the like the bands and whatnot, I have some colleagues that are situated across the pond, and that's typically where I get my Cuban cigars from when I have them shipped to me. They okay, I shouldn't say that.
Yeah, that didn't happen.
No,
When they
that didn't happen.
get them to you,
They're on your doorstep.
Yeah.
Go from there,
Yeah,
Drew. Skip that step.
when they get to me,
That's it. Stop there.
Yeah, when I start looking at bands from here, like from some of the shops, like when I go down to Mexico, and you'll see like Cuban, like let's just say Cohiba, and then you look at the bands from there, and then you come and look at the band. I look at the band, the real band of the cigar that I've received. There's little differences there. There's definitely some nuances there that are not. They're just, you can tell they're counterfeit. And absolutely correct. If you ever just split one down open, you can definitely tell the difference in the tobacco quality, for sure. But my question, and a lot of people ask me this at the lounge a lot. I have some friends that do go down to Cuba, and I believe they're allowed to bring back something, not much, but they always ask about question about Cuban seeds that are then transported, or at least people tout that they're Cuban seeds that they are growing in other regions. Is that, I mean, how does one really, really accept that is it a Cuban? Can you say that that's a Cuban seed tobacco leaf that's in there? I mean, that's my question.
That's a great question.
That is a great question. And one of the reasons why I smoke Cuban cigars is because early 2000, I helped a study in Canada do lab results on tobacco. And what they were trying to do is they were trying to be able to do a quick chemical analysis of the tobacco coming into Canada and determine whether it's Cuban or not. And so all they wanted to know was whether it was Cuban or not. And the reason is because they had like a 40 or 50% tax on Cuban cigars.
Yeah.
And people were getting around that by putting them in Dominican boxes or taking the labels off and sending them in bundles. So what they found, and this is crazy, but what they found was that the Cuban tobacco has the least amount of malic acid of anywhere in the world. Malic acid is the same component that makes sour apples sour. So you're looking, and one of the reasons why Cuban cigars are so in demand is because of the lack of that sourness. And if you ever smoke a Cuban cigar and then compare it with any other cigar, the initial taste, you'll get just a little pucker. You get a little bit of sourness, and then it may dissipate through your smoking process because your mouth will get used to it. taste buds will get used to it. But that is a difference between Cuban soil and the soil around the world. So if it's Cuban tobacco, it doesn't matter where it's grown unless it's grown in Cuba. You're not going to, I mean, that's where they, in Nicaragua, that's what they started with, Cuban tobacco seeds. And they have great plants, but it's grown in malic acid rich soil. So you're going to get that flavor that is not Cuban. And so that's a great question.
Yeah. That's definitely what my suggestion is taste. I like I said, tell them you have to smoke some Cuban cigars, organically. You have to really get that sense of what the consistency in the flavor and in the soils. I mean, it does come through in the tobacco leaves for sure. So that was one of my experiences when I'm smoking a true Cuban cigar, is that flavor is none other like other ones that you can tell they're grown in the DR or Honduras or wherever they're grown in South America. But you definitely can tell the difference in that. And so,
Bill, please don't hesitate to tell me if I know my shit or if I'm full of shit, right? Which is fine.
Okay.
Right? My experience without I want to get into like an appearance of trying to diagnose like if it's a fake or not, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm gonna skip that part for now, and we'll get to it. Nelson, please keep me on track because there's two things that I'm skipping, and normally I just forget, and Nelson always brings it back. When I'm smoking a Cuban, and I tell people, like, hey, like, if we got a box of these and we're splitting them with friends and we're gonna smoke them together and do that there, I notice it's not, I don't want to go as far as saying like it's a tight draw, but the characteristic of a tight draw, what I mean by that is there's a subtleness to the burn and there's a slowness to the burn as opposed to cigars from any other region. And then I also want to kind of semicolon that with saying, hey, there's also a lingering effect, not from smoke content, but from the wrapper content on my palate.
Yep.
On there. And that's like my if I smoke a Cuban and it kind of, I don't say smokes quick, but it's kind of like, okay, the draw is, it gives the characteristics of it being tight. Am I kind of on point with that, or am I just totally, do I know my shit, or am I full of shit?
You are not full of shit, okay?
Thank you, sir.
About this.
About this, right?
Yes. Well, yes, about this.
It's so you've picked up on that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Cuban cigars, they roll these cigars to be a little bit tight, and that's so that you smoke them slower, so you can taste nuances. You can take your time with a cigar. Like, for example, a Robusto sized Cuban cigar may last almost twice as long as a non-Cuban Robusto sized cigar. And it's, people don't understand why Cuban cigars are so tight, but that's the reason. They do that on purpose. Now, you do get, they are human made. You do get some that are loose and some that are really too tight, but the majority of them are just right, which is just tight enough to make you smoke them slower.
Yeah. Any characteristics you want to shoot to Bill, Drew?
Well, the other thing to that too, like I was telling you earlier, Joe, I was smoking the, I can't say that word 100%. Partagas. I have some Lewis. I can't say that, Joe. How do you say that?
Lusitanias?
I always want to call, yes, Lusitanias. There you go. And and you're talking about tight and not being so loose, but like the ash on this, and this is the ash. When I was smoking earlier, I mean, I could still pick it up. It's very nice and somewhat tight. It's grayish. It's not as black or charcoaly. And the way it falls off the cigar on its own. I mean, I don't have to flick it. I know with some of my other cigars that are from other South American countries, I have to either tap it or whatnot for it to fall. But in this one here, it just falls off on its own, like in segments. And I truly had from that cigar 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces of ash that stayed together. And so that was the other. That's been my other experience with some of the party cigars. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there. Is that something that they can also go by? I guess I'm just kind of putting that question out there.
That's a good question, but I believe that there's a lot of cigars around the world that are rolled a lot better than they used to be. So you're going to get a tighter ash. But most of the time, Cuban cigars always have tight ash because of the way that tobacco is bundled, the way they have a tighter roll. So that's a good observation.
Yeah. Nelson,
I'm learning.
Do
I'm
you have
educated.
an observation? You
Yeah, I do, and I have to say I've created my own journey of Cuban cigars over the last 12 months. I started getting more into them, and it's funny you were talking about the fakes. I've experienced both. There's some where you can just look at the band and there's no way this thing is real. But there was a couple of times where I thought it smoked funny, and I said, "The hell with it!" I cut it open, bro. The stuff I saw inside that thing.
What, like a kitchen sink?
It was I'm like, it literally looked like somebody just swept the floor. Mm-hmm. There were stems. Like, actually, that was part of the thing too. The feel of the cigar kind of gave it away. There was clearly stems in there. But Bill, the other thing we haven't talked about that I've just noticed on my own. So I keep my Cubans separate because of the cigar beetles and all that, right?
Yes.
And I find that my Tupperware, where I keep it, has a unique aroma. And it's a mix. I have all mix of Cuban cigars in there, but there is a unique aroma that does not live in my other stuff.
Yes.
That I think,
that's very wise.
To me, identifies the Cuban cigar.
And I think just the opposite. I think that non-Cubans have that unique aroma that identifies a non-Cuban cigar, which is basically the same thing you were saying.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I look at it opposite, because every non-Cuban cigar that I've smelled has that distinct odor. And it's definitely non-Cuban. I actually had a blind test where a friend of mine would put the cigar up to my nose. I'd have my eyes shut and I could say Cuban, non-Cuban, Cuban, non-Cuban. and it was 100%, which blew his mind, but it's just something that I'm very aware of, as you are as well. And I even have a separate dry box for my non-Cuban cigars if I smoke them. And and the only time really I smoke them is I belong to a blog, I guess a online community called Cigar Pass. We have virtual herps every Saturday night, and we have smoking parties where someone would send out a bunch of cigars, and then we would all smoke them and compare the taste and stuff. And so that's pretty much the only time I smoke a non-Cuban cigar. But I do also send out Cuban cigars, which everyone is very thankful for. And and they're starting to notice the difference.
They're truly, I mean, you got to get past the embargo taboo, and all of that stuff. But there is truly, like we talk about being passionate about the regular cigars that we have in our rotation, but there is truly a romance when you sit down and have a true Cuban cigar. And
it's an experience.
There's not a lot of relights needed at all. And as someone like me who talks a lot and on the show, right? I mean, I've lit this thing once and started the interview and I'm still going. And it's just it's there, and it's just a slow burning cigar. I'm smoking that Ramon Alones. The notes I'm getting, right? I want to kind of combine that into the notes I'm getting. It's the saltiness and the earthiness are just right in the forefront. And if you regular puff it, you're like, okay, it's tasty, lingers on your palate, lingers on the tongue, lingers on the lips. Really strong salty component, really strong earthy component, but not gritty earth, right? And then the retrohale, I'm getting this like balanced white pepper with the salt on there, and it's completely like engulfing me, like in the moment.
I'm getting excited listening to you.
It's crazy. It's crazy, right? And you know,
Me too.
and Bill's voice, and Bill's voice is like, you know, you could do an audiobook. Like seriously,
Yeah, I agree.
You could totally do an audiobook. I couldn't, because you'd have to like adjust the volume as I'm speaking and getting excited. But you could totally. There you go, Bill. You can do a Cuban audiobook, right? But
As you light the Cuban cigar, you notice this.
Oh my God.
I like it. I like it, right? And so, like, what were you getting from the cigar that you shared with us with that Ramon Alones?
I am also getting the salty, earthy, delicious flavor that is so Cuban. These are from 2016, I believe. So they've got 7 years on them. So they're starting to get the nuances. And you'll notice that there's some changes along the way. Right now, I think I'm about the same position you are, and I'm getting some changes already.
Yeah.
Started out with some leather, earthy nut notes, and now I'm getting like a stewed fruit, like almost a fruity tartness that is on the aftertaste. Like it lays on the tongue after you blow the smoke out for a while, and then on the retrohale, I'm getting the white pepper, like you say.
Yep.
And it's just a delicious cigar.
It truly is. And what I'm noticing too with the fruitiness, you know how I said like it was on the front of my tongue. And it lingers around the lips from the wrapper. You could taste that, but that fruitiness, it's not quite the back of the tongue, but it starts to transition towards the back of the tongue. If that makes sense. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to make sure, because sometimes I say stuff and it comes out all wrong, right? Yeah. And it's like it's just a slow. Even the smoke around you is not like too smoky. It just elegantly goes up, does its thing. The ash component there, and what I notice is that like with Cubans too, on some of the ash component, right? It kind of flares up a little bit. That just didn't quite burn the wrapper. It just flares, and so the wrapper makes like a little square. Only Nelson can see this, but you see how it it has that little square there, right? And it's so it's just elegant. The feeling in your hand too. Like you ever pick cigars up? Drew and I and Nelson talk about this all the time. I can tell if it's in the non-Cuban world, if you pick up the cigar and it's really light, it's made from the bottom part of the plant, the absolute bottom, right? And I'm like, oh wow, totally. Like to me, that's a dead giveaway just from touching it. Right, as opposed to picking up and having it feel. But the Cubans are lighter than your Nicaraguans or your Dominicans. They seem lighter there. But when what's the word? When you don't want to squish it, but when you're feeling its density, it's still dense enough.
Right.
You know, it's just
there's definitely strength in there, and when they're rolling that cigar, the strength is there for sure as far as the density goes. And then the other part to that is just, I feel anyways with the ones that I get that I'm lucky to acquire is they're not as oily or they're not as shiny. You know, they're toothy, if that's the word I'm looking for. Yeah, toothy, smooth. And just a feel of the wrapper itself. So that's the other experience I've had with a true Cuban stick versus a stick that was Cuban seeded, but coming from the other South American countries.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt. There's definitely, I mean, we just laid them out here. There's definitely some unique qualities to a Cuban cigar. The aroma, the taste. When Joe said about the wrapper on your palate, I totally right away. I was like, yeah, I get that too. Absolutely.
Like it almost tingles it tingles the lips. Like almost like, did you ever use like minty chapstick? And it doesn't, not the minty flavor. Please don't, like it's that lingering. You know when you use like a chapstick or whatever.
Yeah, I know chapstick.
Yeah, and you put it on, and it gives you like a little like it does. It's like it's just amazing.
It's. I would challenge someone who to not figure out that it's like you can figure out it's a Cuban. It's not hard to figure out it's a Cuban, just based on the qualities we just said.
Right.
You know, if you look for those things about, if you want to spot a bad Cuban, it's not a perfect science, but if it smells right, if it looks right, if it feels right. I mean, even the burn, Joe, I totally agree with you on that one too. The slower burn, I find most of my Cubans do that.
Oh yeah,
they all burn slower.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You know, and you know, it's just truly enjoyable, and it takes you to another level. Let's talk about some of the characteristics, if we can, about the pre-light. Right, we kind of skipped that. Right. Like, I have my theories. I'll let you guys go first. Right. You know, Bill and Drew and Nelson, about, because it happens all the time. Every time I'm in a brick and mortar, I know it happens to Nelson. I know it happens to Drew. Somebody always visited somebody from somewhere, and they went to an island and they gave them the cigar because they know they're cigars, and they say, Joe, and they come up to it and they, Joe, is this real? Has that? I mean,
100%.
Right? Is this real? Right?
100%.
So when we get someone else's cigar, so not one that we went and purchased, not one that we've done, take us through your experience, Bill, through the pre-light. Like, what are some of the characteristics you like, and then we'll do a round robin of that too. Unless Bill picks all of them and we just nod and move on. See, I wanted to start with like us first, but it is Bill's interview, so go for it, Bill.
Yeah.
I don't mind hearing what you guys say first.
No, because we've already proved that like we know our shit, which is good, right?
Yeah, you do.
So if you said I was full of shit, then I probably would have tried again to redeem myself. But go ahead, Bill.
Well, since it's your show, I'm not going to say you're full of shit this time.
Oh. That's awesome. That's awesome.
I'm kidding.
That's cool.
So pre-light, I like to touch the cigar. I like to feel the cigar. And I'll feel it from head to toe, head to foot, cap to foot. And I look at the cap, I see the triple cap. It's very unique. You know, a lot of the non-Cuban cigar rollers try to emulate that, but Cuban has it down, and the triple cap is very unique. And then I smell it. I smell the head. I smell the foot, the middle of the cigar, and you get different odors, different aromas coming from that. And you know, and then of course I cut it. What I like to do is I like to use my, if I can, I like to use my punch.
Mm-hmm.
So the punch is one of the best ways to open a cigar head, open the cigar cap, and it makes it very neat, and then it reduces the possibility of breaking the cigar. You know, if you left it in your dry box too long. And then I'll get some dry hits, or what I call cold hits, and I'll taste the flavors coming through the unlit tobacco, and then I'll make a note of that mental note. And a lot of times I'll make reviews and I'll describe in detail what I taste, and then the lighting of it. It's almost a ritual where you take that lighter. I like a single jet. A lot of people like the double jets, but I like the single jet because it's very accurate. And I'll go around the cigar, and then I'll concentrate on the middle, and then I'll blow on it a couple times, and get that ember going, and then I'll start smoking it. A lot of people, what they'll do is they won't even cut the cap; they'll light it, and they say, "Oh, well, you know, if you light the cigar with the cap open or cut or punched, then you're gonna have some of the tobacco absorb the lighter fluid or some of the gas, Now, I'm not sure about that. A lot of people swear by it, but I'm not sure about that. So I just cut it or punch it and then light it and then smoke it. What about you guys?
Well, first thing I do is I look at the cap, right, of the cigar, and you can see me, right, Bill? Like you can see
Yes.
us. Okay, I've never did a reverse show where I was interviewed out of here. I've been remote, and my co-host was remote, but I've never done it that way. So I just want to make sure that you can see me. What I've noticed about the cap is that as it goes, I'm going to use the bigger unlit cigars as a sample. But what I've noticed is that it goes up the side of the cigar, and then before the top of the cap, it's almost like a 45-degree angle around the cap before the cap. And that's so if I didn't know you and you said and you were with a friend, Bill, and you said, hey, I got this Cuban from a friend who visited an island, is this real? The first thing I do is I look at the cap, and if it doesn't have that ledge, it's out the door, right? So in other words, it almost goes up like this, the side of the cigar, and then it's a 45-degree angle, and then on top where there's a gap in my hands is the cap part of it. If it doesn't have that noticeable tiered ledge from me, I'm like, okay, suspect goes through my mind. And then, if it's somebody else's, I really don't like to stick my nose in it and do all of that. But I do kind of feel it for the density in there. And I notice in some of the wrappers, they can be veiny at times, but not like bad veiny from like other brands. So it's almost like thinner
Veins?
Yeah, thinner veins.
Yeah,
and
the
I
veins.
noticed that they're not all the way transparent through the veins. They're almost like little broken, not bubbles, but little broken bumps on there. And then there would be smoothness, and then a bump, and then a smoothness around the whole vein part. And then I look at that. I look for that. So those are the two characteristics.
I misunderstood your question. When you were talking about pre-light, I thought you were talking about my ritual on pre-lighting the cigar.
No, I was talking about how you identify a potential fake or
Okay, give me a
versus real.
second, and I'll tell you what I think real quick.
Okay, go for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
The first thing I do is look at the cap, like you do. I do see that 45-degree angle, and then at the very top of the cap, it's always just a bit flat, and there's, unless it's of course a pyramid. And then I look at the rest of the cigar. It's going to be very smooth, not very many veins. One of the most important things is if you have a vein going up into the cap, once it reaches the cap, it disappears, and there may be just a little slight bulge where the vein is. But on Cuban cigars, it disappears. On fake cigars, it goes all the way to the top of the cap. And if you look at the rest of the cigar, it's pretty smooth. And even, the lower quality Cuban cigars won't have many veins protruding in the cigar, stems protruding in the cigar. And then, of course, you look at the bunch. At the bottom of the cigar, you can see, I'm not sure if you can see that.
Yep, totally.
But,
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. You'll see different, a lot of times you'll see some different colors with the Seco, Ligero, Velato, the different bunches that you see in there. And then you'll see swirls, and then you'll see, you'll never see like a circle.
See,
You always see that in a fake cigar. Go ahead.
I'm glad you brought that up because I knew absolutely nothing about the foot. Like if you were to have me identify it by foot, I'd be totally like lost in the dark. I'm just being honest. You know what I mean?
Cool.
So I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, you can. So it's almost like you can see like it starts to kind of spiral a little bit, but it's not totally a transparent spiral. Is that
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's correct.
Awesome. What do you do, Nelson?
Well, I almost feel like want to play some naughty music with the way I'm about to describe what I do.
Oh boy.
Is it Clinton-esque? Yeah.
So
Internet and sensation.
I usually take my Cuban and I start looking at it from head to toe.
Mm-hmm.
I roll it, not feeling it yet, just looking at it. I smell it. Smell for me was a big thing. That's why I brought up earlier. I noticed the unique smell.
Yes.
And then I start to feel it. I start to roll it in my fingers, not tightly because obviously you don't want to ruin
Yeah, like twirl it.
I twirl it like, right away. If you feel stems, this is probably garbage. Cut it open, verify, don't buy it again, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I do look at the cap, but I did not know what you guys just talked about. The observation you made, Joe. Yeah. So that's something I'll definitely look out for. But I do look at the cap, make sure there's a nice triple cap on there. And then, that's it. That's my ritual. The band, obviously. I look at the band. I've been burned enough times now that, you start to pay attention to the bands.
Mm-hmm.
But that's really it. And obviously the smoke itself. Sometimes you can smoke it and this thing's fake.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I know, I don't, the only band experience I have because I've gone for the characteristics of the cigars, I just really never gotten there. Most of the cigars that people get from a guy we know who visited whatever, right? Right. It's a Cohiba, and we know that Cohiba is the most counterfeited cigars for the Cuban market. So other than the Cohiba band, what do you three look for in your bands?
Well, so I love Epicure's number 2s, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I have seen a rash of fake ones where, so on the band, there's this gold leaf line that goes around the whole band. It's a little design. It's at angles, right? And if you look at a real one and a fake one, it's a lot thinner on the fake ones. It's super thinner, where the other one is bold and wider on the other one. That actually was the same cigar that I said the first time I cut one open, and it was like someone dumped a dustpan in the wrapper. That's the reason I opened it. I saw that the band was way off, and I was like, "Screw this! There's no way this is real." And I cut it open, and confirmation made.
Drew, what do you do for the bands or for your ritual?
No, the ritual. I just look at the foot, the body, then I go to the cap, and I guillotine cut mine because I actually like to just kind of squish the tip once I get a little moisture on there, just to get some of that natural flavor as much as possible. But I have the fortunate to have 2 Cuban cigar rollers here. Well, one of them's a manufacturer, Rojas, and then the other one is Mario Alamanza. These guys are actually certified rollers in Cuba when they were there, and they have educated me to understand that the cigars are not they're very high quality in wrapper binder filler. It takes about 100 steps to even roll a cigar in Cuba. So there's a lot that goes into it that they themselves, because that's what they do in Cuba. They're as Noel Rojas has told us, and as Mario's told me, they basically pick out what you're going to do for a living in that country. And if you have that the acuity to roll the cigar, then you go on to further training, so to speak. And it's a very tedious process for them. The tobaccos, when they're brought in from the fields or when they're at the barns or they're curing houses, then they go through and they inspect them, the wrapper, and they go through this process of picking out only the best that they feel that they are going to make in that time. So being able to have those 2 here in my backyard here in Texas, it's great because they have showed me what to look for, and most of all, just enjoy the cigar. once, so yeah, I look at the foot, look at the cigar itself, the body of it, and then the cap. Like I said, I like to taste the tobacco, so get it a little bit moistened and then do my pre-light, which I do with pretty much standards. So I just kind of go around it with a single torch burner just around the edges, just to get that aroma going, to get my senses ready for what I'm about to do on my first draw, and then I bring in the soft burner, the soft lighter in to light it so that the temperature is not aggravated, I guess, if you want to say that. Because again, once you understand that cigar has gone through a 100-step process, and it's been like that forever, you really want to appreciate that cigar. It's I don't care what the price point is. You really want to get the most out of it as you can in that experience.
Switching gears here, Bill.
Yeah.
Like in most Cubans, and in this one that I'm having now, incredible floral component.
Mm-hmm.
Like a bouquet of transition.
Yes.
When you're going through Cuban cigars.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's one thing I've noticed from I've done my round robin of the Rojas kit, FYI,
Yes.
for you story geeks and for Nelson and Drew, and I can almost do an episode of which region for Nicaragua and what characteristics are there. From that kit, and I've done I have notes upon months. I've been on that journey, and
the flavor wheel.
and driving that out, but just street cred. Bringing it back to how it relates to this episode, right? When you have a Cuban, right, like that you get. It's not a one-trick pony, right? It's not going to be a pepper bomb or a salt bomb or sour is only usually at that first inch, and then it dissipates quick. It transitions. While you're smoking, that smoothness that I was telling, that slowness, that cadence stops. It's like almost like if you took off your watch, like you would like lose time. Right, and you could lose time smoking a Cuban cigar because it's the floral component becomes very dominant with different, and you could also like subcategorize that.
Right.
Have you noticed that, Bill? Like when
absolutely, yes,
yeah, absolutely.
And I noticed that the cigars that were rolled in the summer months, of course, on the virgin thighs, are a little saltier on your lips. And,
business.
yes.
What can we expect? We got about 10 minutes or so. What can we expect? Like future, right? When you started this interview, you've given of highlights of what's good years to look out for, and what some of the years that could be suspect and whatnot. I guess my main question is kind of two-part, right? Is that because of weather, or was there some, it's a different country. Obviously, things are run completely different than here in the States business-wise. Like, is that a component of, like, just get them out and done? Or was it a weather factor that made some of those years suspect or greater, whichever one you want to talk about? And then what could we expect for the next 3 to 5 years or projections coming out for Cuban cigars?
Great question. Cigars that when you harvest a cigar and then you box it is like 18 months to 24 months. So you have to look at how the harvest is to determine how the boxes are. The harvest of 2018, late 2017, 2018, was one of the best harvests, but they went old school because of the embargo. They had very little fertilizer. They had hardly any insecticide, so they had the kids out there fanning the leaves like old school. And it's for the first time I opened a box of 2020 cigars and I smelled the ammonia, which I haven't smelled in a long time. And this is actually a good thing, because the 2020 cigars, as they age, are some of the best cigars I've smoked in 20 years. But the big problem is 2019, November, December, and January 2019, 2020, they had way too much rain. And this is usually their dry months. The dry months, they kind of, I forget the word, but they make the tobacco, I guess it's, I forget what they call it, but it's kind of, what it does is when you have less water, the tobacco draws more flavor from the earth, and you get a better quality tobacco. When you, just like anything, just like tomatoes, like if you stress out the tomatoes right before harvest, you get a better tasting, sweeter, juicier tomato, because when you stress them out, you get a better quality to it. And the problem with 2019 and 2020 is they had so much rain that the tobacco leaves are drooping on the plant. And so in 2022, in 2023, you're going to get some bad Cuban cigars. They're not going to be as flavorful. Plus, the economy is really bad right now, and so they're trying to increase the amount of Cuban cigars that they're selling. So they're using pretty much all of the plant instead of how they used to, like you said, going through getting the best quality leaves and making the cigars the best in the world. And so they're having to use these stressed out, but not in a good way, tobacco, and they're using all of it. So 2020 and 2021 were very similar. So you're looking at 22, 23, 24, you're not going to get some good cigars. Hopefully that changes next year and you get some higher quality tobacco. So what I would do if I were collecting Cuban cigars, I would really stock up on the 2020 year, because these are going to be amazing cigars in the future. Number one, because 2018, 2019, actually 2017 through 2019, they were perfect tobacco plants. And so you're seeing the benefit of that now. Plus they did the old school method, which is also a big benefit. And so that's why these 2020 cigars are outstanding. But then you go beyond that, late 2021, early 2022, and then beyond the next few years, you're not going to get some good Cuban cigars. They're going to try to keep their level around $600 million dollars in revenue. So they're going to have to use all of the plant, and it's going to be lesser quality. So I hope that helps understand. Yeah, helps you understand.
Yeah, they're gonna try to. So it sounds like they're shooting for a sustainable number to make their businesses survive to the next step, and they're like barely crossing the finish line, and they're gonna use scraps, if you will, that they wouldn't normally use in a traditional harvest.
Correct. And the wrapper is the most important part of the cigar. And when you have a lesser quality wrapper, then the whole cigar is affected by that.
Right. When did they stop? You've made some reference to this old school method. When, I know you said it in the beginning of the episode, but when did they stop incorporating that old school method, and did they do it out of necessity to save the product, or did they do it because they had some extra help lying around and wanted to save the product? I guess it's one of the same questions, right? Because it's like I remember when we interviewed, Noah Rojas, when my first interview as non-Rojas Cigars, I asked him how he got into the cigar industry, and he was working in Cuba, and the government banged on his door and said, "This is what you are going to do." You know what I mean? And I was like, okay, it changed the whole interview, right? It changed the whole dynamics of the interview, as opposed to I was passionate about the business and the leaf. And, the government just banged on the door and told us that this is what we're going to do. And that's what we did.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's a good point. And what you'll notice is the embargo really affected Cuba, not just their economy, but the way they grow and the way they harvest and the way they box roll the cigars. So in 2018, 2017, they had just enough to do like new school, but 2018, 2019, they did the old school, and that's why you're seeing the 2020 cigars so well, so good. And then of course up through early 2021, probably halfway through 2021, is where we'll see the best Cuban cigars because of that.
Yep. And then it'll peak, and then it'll kind of trough off and then go downhill from there. How long does that now, if you look at it historically over the past 15 years, has it peaked and troughed per harvest, or has it, so if it goes downhill 2022, 2023, when can we expect it to be on the uprise for better tasting? I know it depends on the harvest. I get but you're like, Joe, I can tell you how it happened, but I can't predict the weather. I know that. But right. is it truly harvest dependent, and then they make the adjustments? Or
absolutely.
Okay.
It's truly harvest dependent. Just like 2013, 14, and 15, they had terrible harvests. Hurricanes. They had problems with mold. And so the 2016 and 17, early 18 cigars are not good quality. And you'll notice that there's a lot of them around because people are smoking them and then they're selling them. If they stocked up on boxes back then, they're selling them. And so I would try to avoid those years.
Yeah.
Would they do they must know this, right? So clearly, I'm just judging from experience here on Story Geeks. When we had the opportunity to interview Manuel and Noah, roller of La Aurora Cigars, with translation, right, from Willie Herrera, right? He was telling us about how important the harvest is and all that stuff. If they know this as the roller, do they have enough supply to space out the product and skate by, or are they really going year to year with the harvest, and that's where it is? Does that make sense?
Yeah, lately, that's a great question. And lately they're going year to year with the harvest because they're still trying to produce the same amount of cigars to get that revenue.
Gotcha.
And a lot of people don't know that Cuba imports 2/3 of the food that they consume. And so they spend, approximately $2 billion a year just to feed their people. And, 500 million of that is Cuban cigar related.
Factory capacity. Do I have a couple more minutes? Everybody got a couple more minutes? Sure. You cool? All right.
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Yes.
All right. Factory capacity. Do they even pay attention to any of that, or is it just they're shooting for the number and jokes? Why are you hopping on this thing, right?
No, that's a great question.
As a business owner here in the United States, if I knew we were going to be having problems, right? Business forecasting, as you know, in your cybersecurity job, you something might come up. You got to kind of prepare and hedge and do that. Are they? I don't know, what I'm even trying to ask, because I know I'm comparing a communist business operation to capitalism, right? It's like, Joe, go back to fifth grade. You learned this in fifth grade. Why are you asking these questions, right? I'm a stubborn Italian. I don't know what to tell you, right? But no,
Well, I think to your point earlier, Joe, I imagine a lot of this is driven by the government. It's not even up to the factory, right?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get out.
That's a great point. Yes,
that's the
true.
point. That's what I'm trying to get at. Thank you, Nelson, for getting inside my head, as Drew and Nelson often do. Right. So the government knows that we got these freaking problems, but they're just going to try to inject that.
Yeah, they want the revenue.
Gotcha. Now.
That's exactly right. Yes.
Okay. So other than cigars, what else are they relying on for imports, exports, for sustainability of the country? Do you know offhand?
Sugar.
Okay.
That's their main export is sugar. And
Which
then, of course, weapons. weapons.
Sure. But
The doctors, they have some of the best medical schools, so they farm out their doctors as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
oh yeah, most of them come in and they go to like Harvard, Yale, through whatever, through visas, and do their thing, and then come here, get grants, and apply legally and do that, and do medical research.
That's bananas.
That's correct.
Yeah. And can you imagine, like, comparing it to my experience with Noah Rojas story? You're going to be a doctor, and you're going to have to study your ass off learning this thing, or else. You know what I mean?
Right, or else.
Because it's not like they've come to the States and dreamed of becoming a doctor. They were enforced to do that profession by whatever the government deemed necessary for sustainability of the country.
Yep.
It's wild.
That's right. Yep.
It's wild. Awesome. Drew, let's do a round robin of final questions for Bill, and and Bill, you were worried about time, right? We could go on for another. I could keep asking you the same question about this million. Right? I'll keep asking you the same question twice. Like I'm going to get another answer. It's a communist country, Joe. Get it 3 ahead. Go ahead, Drew.
Yeah, no, I was just going to add to that, to the Cuban cigar quality. As Mario was just texting me a little bit ago. He was saying that a lot of their aging, their tobacco leaves, is the most important process for that. He went back to back pre 2000 that a lot of the different types of leaves that are selected for age potential, they do reserve them. They reserve that from each year of harvest, and they keep them in special curing barns or houses, as they call them out there, and they just kind of go through that extra process of getting really to the point of that there's a lot of inspectors that go through that process with them, and the rollers themselves, because they really want their people to really be on top of their game. They understand the rollers themselves. They almost cross-train everybody from the field to the factory, every step of the process and why it is the way it is for their tobaccos and their cigar product, final product. So, and like I said, I can only guess that they have not a stockpile, but they have release in small batch, I guess you would want to call it. And for that, the quality really comes through in the product for the end user.
That's actually a good question, Drew, with the quality. Like, are they sticklers with that because they want to get to that number? Or is it just pushed in a good harvest? Or are they not as stringent as we would think? Like,
they used to be.
Okay.
They used to be, yeah.
Yep, but that subsided because it's all about the money.
Lately.
Gotcha.
That's right.
Gotcha. See, I'm answering my own questions. It's going quicker, Nelson.
It's great.
Awesome. I have another question before we jump on to Nelson. Politics, right?
Yes.
I don't care what color anybody is. Whichever they choose. But now I've done a segment on this when under the Obama administration, when I was with Cigar Club Radio, where the United States has loosened up restrictions on Cuba, right? For product. We had cruise lines. Carnival was the first one to actually go there and do a direct into Cuba. And Americans can still travel there. There are restrictions, of course. Bringing back product, we know there's restrictions. But it almost seems like, because then Trump gets in, it's like, nope, boom. And then now we have the D in, right? And it almost seems like if you follow a 30-year history, whenever we have a Democrat in presidential power, the restrictions start getting loose. And it's almost like cigar enthusiasts for us, and people say, oh, they're going to release the embargo. They're going to release the embargo. I don't think that's ever going to happen, at least in our lifetime.
It came close with Obama.
They did, and I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the administrative hookups that I found in my research for there was that the Obama administration they got strung up on labor laws. That was like the big thing where they said, okay, we're going to loosen these restrictions and then have you have more products for import, export, and potentially get rid of this embargo. But you, Cuba, have to change your labor laws. And I remember saying, like, the same thing dude, excuse me, Mr. Obama, with all due respect, it's a communist country. Like, they're not going to change their labor laws. Like, you know what I mean? Like, than, like, that was like the big hiccup. And that's how they got close. It's like almost if they kind of, like, I don't say turn a blind eye, because the conditions are probably horrendous. I mean, we've heard from them from interviewing people who have made the transition from, I used to be in a Cuban factory, now I'm in, a Nicaraguan factory and doing my own thing here in the States and all that stuff. But I mean, is that pretty accurate with that? It's like a big hiccup, because the United States want to see, like, they're never going to unionize, God forbid, right? What do you think, Bill?
That's a great question. I think it's, like you said, it's all political.
Yeah.
And I don't really think they care that much. It's just something that's on their list that they're going to mention because they want to make it sound good. But Cuba is going to be Cuba, and they're not going to change what they're doing for anybody. And just you can see that with China and Russia, because right now they don't get the help from Venezuela anymore. Mm-hmm. So they went to China, and China's like, you know what? We're going to forgive your debt, but we're not going to really help you because, you don't have good management. And that's the biggest problem. And then they went to Russia, and Russia's like, well, we can't afford it now. So you're on your own. And that's, and they're still going to continue to do what they do, what Cuba does.
Mm-hmm. That's, scary.
Yeah. It is.
Scary. Good thing they don't have big weapons being so close.
Right. Exactly.
Right. Not to turn this into global politics. Next week on Political Geeks, we interview right. But it's crazy how they just chase that number for sustainability and just go years and years and years. So we're never going to see in our lifetime the release of that. And even if there was ever a change in power, I don't think that we would see it. And then I get the argument, oh, well, Cuba would do so much better if we open up the borders and allow Cuban cigars to sell here in the States. And it's like, Cuba has lived for years without United States help. They don't really care. Like,
you literally just took the word. I was just going to say, it's not like the U.S. is the only market available to Cuba.
Right. I mean, we've interviewed other people non-Cuban in the show, and they're like, across the pond, I'm doing 10 times better than here in the States.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And, it's a different lifestyle. It's crazy. Yes. Nelson, you want to do a final wrap-up for
I have no more questions for Bill. I just wanted to say thank you. It was actually awesome having you on the show. We have been talking about Cubans for a while, so I think it was really cool that you were able to come on, and you clearly have a vast knowledge of this. What did I learn about that dirt in Cuba? What is that chemical?
It's called malic acid.
Malic acid. Yes. That explains the smell and the taste for me.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Drew, you good? You're on mute.
I'm terrific. No, it's great. It's great to get an insight, from others, and the best way to do that and to educate yourself as a consumer is just to get on these platforms or tune into the platforms, and really, you could spend some hours, on this subject and really get educated by folks who really have that extensive knowledge and can really impart education to smokers here in the United States, because there is a lot of how do you say, counterfeit cigars out there from Cuba, and you do yourself a real good service by just participating in these and take notes and whatnot, and move, and expand your experience so that one day you could pass that on to the younger generation and whatnot. So thank you very much for joining us today. I really I'm looking forward to getting on your site and enjoy and just kind of sit there and chime in every once in a while.
Sounds great.
Can we be invited to the HERF to the
yes.
cool
Join Cigar Pass,
okay,
and then you'll be a part of it. There's a lot of great knowledge with the site. It's been around for 20 years.
Oh wow!
And a lot of great people. We're like a big family, so I'm looking forward to it.
That's so cool. That's crazy cool. What do you think about? So the only thing we didn't answer on this show is where the counterfeits come from, right? Mm-hmm. But like going through my mind, like I wonder if it's like in a warehouse and like you set it up as like Mellows
I
food
definitely
stand
think so.
And like the counterfeit, like all the things are running in my head. Like where would that be? Would it be in Miami? Probably be in Miami.
I mean, Bill, you probably know. Like I think a lot of these come from Switzerland, Hong Kong. And I think Joe's right.
Mexico.
I think
Spain, Mexico.
They have like warehouses of this shit.
Yes. Oh yeah.
And their whole business model is like counterfeited Cubans.
Yeah. Every time I go to Mexico and I go to whether it's a resort or like Cozumel, I mean, and there's just they're everywhere. I mean,
the local beach tobacconist comes up to you.
Yeah. Well, no, I'll walk in there and I'll just start.
Oh my God,
I'll just start looking around and I'm like, well, one, they're not really well taken care of. They're not in a nice humidor or whatnot. So I can right there. It kind of pretty much tells you, that they're not really taking care of that. So the investment there must be zero for them. I mean, at this point, and they're making 100% profit off of this counterfeit product. But you definitely can tell.
Bill just hit on
go to those countries.
To me, it is one of the most known counterfeit presentations, but yet people still buy them, which is the Cohibas in a glass box that you buy on the beach. And I've lost count of how many people like, hey, I got these on the beach, and they send me a picture. I'm like, dude, Cohiba doesn't sell them in boxes with glass lids on them. Like,
yeah.
And then you see the Monte Cristos and the Cello. That's a good giveaway right there.
I haven't seen that one. That's a good one.
Monte Cristos and the Cello.
And that's another thing too. The Cello, the Cello wrapper will give it away too. Especially some of the really higher end cigars. You don't see those in a lot of Cellos, so you got to be ready to transport those if you do come across them across the pond. Other than that, I've used a fake box of Cohibas when I was coming back into the United States. And they asked me if I had anything to declare. I said, yeah, I got these Cohiba cigars, and I knew what was going to happen. They were going to go ahead and take those and from me, which she did. The border control agent, and she basically took them out of the box and just did this to them. I mean, she just twisted them and said, you can't have these in the United States. I said, all right. She goes, keep going. I said, all right. So I went through the turnstile, and all my fireworks that I had got through. So I used it as a ruse.
Decoy.
In my younger days.
Brilliant.
Yeah, we've had all. I've walked into cigar shops and have tried to. You have any Cuban? Oh yeah, we got these on the shelf. I'm like, what do you got in the back room? Oh, we don't have a back room, sir. I'm like, all right. I show my ID. I'm like, I live in Rhode Island and I'm in sales for Xerox, so I don't, I'm not like a agent or anything like that. Okay, come to the back room.
Right.
Oh yeah. And like the people I'm with are just like, oh my god, this kid's gonna get us like shot. You know what I mean? You go in the back room and they just unroll the drawers and you're just like, here you go. And then you look. I look at the thing. I'm like, all right, I'm in. Let's go.
That's all right. Didn't Drew reveal 2 crimes already on this show?
What? Oh,
well, the fireworks and something earlier.
Oh yeah.
Oh, how he got his cigars.
Yeah.
And
then me taking them back to the States, I literally had I think I had on this hat, right? Drew Estate hat, some sort of cigar shirt. You know what I mean? And the guy's like, where'd you come from? I'm like, oh, we came from, we came up to Barbados. We did a tour. We did this. We did that. Blah, blah, blah. And actually where I got the Cubans was in Aruba. Yeah, is that the one with a lot of banks? Is that the one with like a billion banks? Or was that Barbados? Yeah, Aruba,
Barbados.
Right? Oh, it's Barbados that has like it has more banks than people because everybody puts their money in Barbados. Yeah. All right, I'm thinking of the day, right?
Offshore.
It was
Counts.
Barbados, right? I was in my 20s and I owned a cigar shop, so everything was a blur then, right? It was just a constant barrage of walking around with a backpack and hoping I wake up not in my own, whatever, right? And it was super cool. And I put the Cubans on the top, right? They're going through my luggage. I had the backpack on the whole time. Then I went right through.
Nice.
I put them right on top. I wasn't going to try to hide them. I was like, something? If they take them, they take them. If not, the guy was already ready to ship them to me and do all of that stuff and whatever. And away we go. And I walked right through it. They searched my luggage.
That's awesome.
You smoke cigars? No. I got like a Drew Estate hat. Freaking probably like a Camacho shirt on. No, I don't smoke cigars at all.
I'm pretty sure talking about coming back from cruises. I bought a Cohiba on the beach, a single, so obviously it was real. And I remember coming through customs in Miami, and I hid it in my pocket, this one quote-unquote Cuban cigar, and I was going to sneak it past the customs. And I got through. They never checked me personally. They just checked my bags and everything. And I was so proud. And now I'm looking back. I just remember this story.
Yeah.
I guarantee that was not a fucking Cuban cigar.
It's okay. Sometimes it's the journey and not the destination,
Jesus.
Right, Bill?
Exactly.
Right.
That's exactly
Sometimes the journey. It's like, I'm one up on them.
Yeah, the effort I went through to sneak that fake fucking cigar in.
Now with TSA, I mean, it's freaking crazy in a post 9/11 world. I can't believe we're coming up on 20 years on that. But anyway, that's another hour of that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Bill, I want to thank you for coming on the show.
Stogie Geeks.
I know what show I'm on. Sharing the knowledge, sharing the experience, having us all chat. I still think that you could totally do an audiobook. That's like your calling for sure. Like seriously, I could like listen to it, there too. And,
Pleasant.
And
Thank you.
I will send you the link on Tuesday when it's all published and all of that type stuff. There
Sounds
too.
good.
If you want to come on and do another subject, we'll keep in touch via email.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to thank the little dark-haired kid from Texas. Thank you, Drew, for your expert commentary. Internet sensation Nelson DeMello, thank you for being here on Story Geeks. Story Geeks, thank you for listening to episode 357. We'll see you next time. Peace.
Peace and love.